The following article is from Quartz, Africa. So let's see. Recently, there has been in the news a series of articles, videos about incidents in China, how they were treating African people and usually even black people, depending on where they come from in the diaspora, but especially Africans. So now, of course, at the time, the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I believe it is, their spokespeople were saying, well, there's no there's no discrimination, there's no racial discrimination in China. These things just don't happen. And if anything did happen, it has to be a misunderstanding. So that's the line, you know. If something did happen that looks like discrimination, it's a misunderstanding. But anyway, they realized that there was so much backlash in the media, and especially in the African continent, that they had to do something about it. So here's this article. After its racism to Africans goes global, a Chinese province is taking anti-discrimination measures. So this is just A. That's one. And how many provinces in China? I'm sure there are many. Instead of having like a central law or something like that, like in the United States, you have civil rights laws to be against discrimination, against like discrimination in housing, discrimination in employment, based on race, um, and where people can have accommodation, whether in hotels or so forth, or education. That's all civil rights that comes out of Washington. But this is just from a province. So that means if you cross over to the next province that's adjacent, you probably could have the same problem. So this doesn't really solve the problem in China, just in one particular province. So officials in China's Guangdong province have announced a raft of new measures aimed at combating a racial discrimination storm which has threatened Beijing's relationship with African governments and Africans globally. It comes from an unprecedented diplomatic scandal broke out because of the treatment of Africans residents in the province's capital, Guangzhou. In April, videos and images of Africans being evicted from their apartments, forced into quarantine, blocked from hotels, and even barred from a local McDonald's went viral on social media and platforms, including Twitter, Facebook, and WhatsApp. Let me just say about the eviction. Like here where I live, uh, even if somebody owes the landlord rent, you just can't come and you you can't just call the police and say, this person didn't pay me rent, I want him evicted. But that wasn't even the case here. These people were being evicted not because they didn't pay rent, but just because of who they were. Africans, of course. See? So here, where I live, you would have to get like a notice, like put on your door or what have you, informing you that you have to go to the court. We have the landlord tenant court here, and you respond to the summons. So you go to court and you argue your point. So nobody is going to come evict you in the middle of the night and make you a homeless person where you have no place to sleep. You see? So a lot of this has to do with treating people as human beings, treating people with dignity, and so forth. As a human being, you don't want to just put somebody out in the middle of the night, especially if it's a place that's cold, where you can be out there in the frost. So apparently in China, they operate quite differently. So let's see, the recent wave of suspicion and anti-foreigner sentiment in the southern port, which is a major hub for African entrepreneurs, was sparked by reports that a group of African men broke quarantine and infected others with the coronavirus. Now, the thing is, in China, rumors tend to be, I don't know, rumors tend to travel fast. So if if you want to like if you want the authorities to come clamp down on somebody or somebody you don't like, then you can make up stories. You know, you can make up stories and say, well, uh, these African men broke quarantine and infected others. Who would they infect? First of all, from what I gather, that area that they happen to be in, they mostly hang around other African people, not Chinese people. So, you know, if they were infecting anybody else, they probably maybe went out to parties if they did, or so forth, and infected other Africans and so forth. So you would have to ask yourself, why this reaction? You know, and even if that were true, then you deal with the people who broke the quarantine. You don't just go around. You don't just go around meting out punishment on people based on dissimilarity by race or what have you, or ethnicity, because somebody else did something or violated a certain principle. That's not the way it's supposed to work. That's called collective punishment. And we know from history where that took us, collective punishment. So Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, and Uganda were among African countries to summon China's ambassadors, along with the African Union Commission, to register their displeasure about the reports privately and at times very publicly. The U.S. State Department also ramped up the scrutiny of happenings in Guangzhou with a warning to African Americans to avoid travel to the city. The response from Beijing had initially been to deny the reports, describing them as rumors and misunderstandings spread by Western media. Despite the fact local media in African countries were the first to report on the issue. However, with the new measures, China is effectively admitting there's a problem and clearly hoping to repair damage to its relationships with African countries. A note published on Monday on the website of Chinese embassy in Nigeria, relaying a message from Guangdong province officials said, we firmly oppose any discriminatory practice against specific individual. Let's close this out. Against any specific individual or groups and allow zero tolerance for discriminatory remarks and deeds. It also said the province was implementing measures on ensuring equal services in 9 sectors. The measures target businesses such as hotels, shopping malls, restaurants, and other places where Africans have been routinely turned away, as well as residential compounds. Education, public transport, and medical service providers are also included in the new regulation. So that means if you go to the hospital, like I saw in one of those videos, the pregnant African lady went to the hospital and asked her to sit down outside, and she couldn't go there. And after she was sent to another hospital, and then they gave their reason for that, or what have you. Any organization or individual shall not restrict or refuse providing hotel accommodation and renting houses to any specific group of people because of their nationality, race, gender, or skin color, nor should they be denied free access to such public venues as local communities, shops, and parks. One of the new measures included in the note said. Now you have to wonder, here in the year 2020, that uh, uh, China is now adopting these measures. I'm not even sure if it's a law, whatever that means. The measures, which is like a civil rights laws that says people should have access to accommodations like hotel, hospital, medical facilities, irrespective of nationality, race, gender, or skin color. Right? Now, in China, the funny thing is in China, there's certain areas in China, or certain hotels, I should say, that if you try to check in, there's only certain hotels that would allow foreigners to stay. So this is interesting because they're saying that hotels shouldn't deny, but at the same time, if you went on a road trip in China, let's say you went out with a tour and you're traveling alone, right? And maybe you rented a car, or maybe you have a motorcycle or what so, and you travel and you decide, oh, let me just stop here for the night. I'm gonna check in the hotel. No, you can't do it. The hotel you want to check into has to be registered. The one that can register you, you can't just do it. And if you move to a different area, a different part, maybe a different province or maybe a different sector or what have you, you have to register with the police if you're going to be staying there in that area. So it's very, very controlled wherever you go. Hence the term police state, as they say, if they may use that term, police state. So they know where you are. They can catch up with you in case. And it's not like somebody coming to the United States. A Chinese person comes to the United States, rents a car, and decides, oh, I'm gonna go cross country, and they're gonna go from, let's say, going from New York to California, right? And they're gonna take maybe like 3 days or something to get there. However, they at nighttime they're gonna like check into a motel and say, let me just check into this motel. There's a motel down the street I see. Let me check in there. In China, you can't do that. In the United States, you could do it. You see, there's no law that's saying that you are not allowed to check into a hotel, or that only you have to be an American or something like that. You see, so a person from China could be traveling through the whole U.S. and they can check into a hotel. They can go in and ask there's a room available for the night. In China, you cannot do that. So if you happen to be in an area in China where that hotel isn't listed that can take in foreigners, well, you're gonna be sleeping outside for the rest of the night. That's how it works in China, unfortunately. So they really need to get up to the modern times, whereby treat people like humans and stop having this police state mentality, and realize that hotels should be open to different people. It shouldn't be only open to people from other parts of China. but it should be open to foreigners too. And if they say, well, they don't have the system involved or what have you, no, then they should get it. I'm sure they should have the technology in China to put in a system in place where if you want to know somebody's a foreigner or what have you, or check their passport. And I've traveled and I know that different countries you go to, yeah, you check at the hotel and you give them your passport to see who you are, what have you. Fine, there's no problem with that. At the same time, why can't China do that? Why it has to be that you could only stay at certain hotels that's registered, with the government for foreigners. You cannot go and stay in a hotel that isn't registered to allow foreigners to stay there. So that ought to change too. They ought to make a change with that. So now to say a dedicated hotline has also been set up for foreign nationals who have concerns. However, it is unclear what kind of sanctions violators of the new measures would face. And that's if some of these people even are aware of these new measures. Given the culture of local Chinese officials to closely follow guidance by their superiors, this change of emphasis to prevent racial discrimination will likely be enforced to some extent, though it may take time to be effective. But these measures have been late in coming, as some African governments have escalated their actions beyond the initial condemnation of events. Last week, Nigeria's House of Representatives unanimously passed a motion on the maltreatment and institutional racial discrimination against Nigerians living in China by the government of China. Okay. Among the reliefs being sought by legislators is to redress in any local or international court for breach of fundamental rights, loss of property, or any other actionable cause occasioned by the maltreatment of Nigerians in China. It also includes a move to check the validity of all immigration documents of every Chinese person in Nigeria. See, so now you have a tit for tat. So they're checking Nigerians, so now the Nigerians gonna check Chinese, and see, this is what happens. This is why we have what you call diplomacy. That's why that's why diplomats have certain rights in different countries, so you don't have a tit for tat. You see, so they have what they call diplomatic immunity, and I'm not talking about regular people. I'm just using it as an example to say why there's something called diplomatic immunity for this kind of reason here. Because what's going on in China to like Nigerians, the Nigerians saying, okay, well, since you're behaving like that with our people, now we're going to be checking these Chinese people in Nigeria. And there's basically nothing you can do about it, you see. And that's the problem, because once you have that kind of mindset, then people can abuse that kind of power and say, okay, every time you see a Chinese person, you could stop that Chinese person to check their documents or what have you, which is kind of a harassment. Nobody wants to live like that. But this is the kind of nonsense that been tolerated in China, and the Chinese people didn't have to put up with that in Africa. They went about their business. In Kenya, where a lawmaker has already warned of possible retribution, nearly 200 citizens have signed up for a repatriation flight from Guangzhou. Okay, so that's the end of the article. So, hopefully, we see a change, you know, and that people, begin to treat people like human beings, like the citizens of the world. The Africans are in Guangzhou, doing business, doing trading, or what have you. The Chinese have a history of trading. They used to travel around the world trading. So the Africans are trading too, you know. So it shouldn't come down to like picking people out, profiling people based on race, and that shouldn't be it. That should not be the criteria to just pull somebody out based on their race. Hopefully the Chinese can learn because there's a lot they have to lose if they were kicked out of Africa. That will surely affect their economy and it will affect their ability to trade with the rest of the world. And that would be very unfortunate because right now there's so much anger out there, especially with the coronavirus and so forth. How that was allowed to get out of China, and most likely it could have been stopped. The same way China was able to like restrict movement, quarantine Wuhan, and so forth. But it allowed travel to go international from China, and now this thing is spread all over the world. So you know, so it's really crazy. Some people say, well, maybe China did it on purpose. I don't think they did it on purpose because China does businesses all over the world, and this virus, uh, it's it's really killing a lot of people. I mean, for those who, okay, it's really horrible. You know, already, I've been informed of a couple of people already now who died from the virus. So the last thing China wants to do is kill its customers around the world because they depend on trade, and they want to be sure that there are people out there in other parts of the world who are going to buy their products. So I don't think China set out to kill people. I think it was unfortunate the way they hide things and the way they try to suppress things, and eventually it backfires on them. And that's really what it amounts to, which is really an unfortunate situation. And hopefully they learn their lesson from that.